I never thought a simple notification ping would be the sound that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. It was a Tuesday, around 3 p.m., and I was sitting in my apartment eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container like the distinguished 28-year-old man I am. My phone buzzed. Dad's name popped up with a voice message. Nothing unusual. Dad had finally figured out how to send voice messages about 6 months ago, and now he used them for everything instead of just calling like a normal person. I pressed play, expecting him to ask me about Thanksgiving plans or tell me about something funny that happened at his accounting firm. Instead, what I heard made me drop my fork into the lo mein. "Hey Jim, it's me." Dad's voice sounded tired, strained. "I know you said not to talk about this anymore, but I can't keep pretending. Seeing Nolan last weekend just brought everything back. Sarah wants to invite him to Christmas, and I don't know if I can sit through another holiday pretending everything's fine. I know what we decided 28 years ago. I know why we did it, but sometimes I wish we'd made a different choice. I wish Nolan never happened. I know that makes me a terrible person, but it's eating me alive, and you're the only one I can tell. Call me when you can." The message ended. I sat there, staring at my phone screen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The voice message was clearly meant for my Uncle Jim, my dad's younger brother. They talked regularly, but this was something else entirely. "I wish Nolan never happened. I'm Nolan James Fletcher, named after my maternal grandfather and my uncle, the beloved only child of Richard and Sarah Fletcher, or at least that's what I'd always thought." My hands were shaking as I replayed the message. Then I replayed it again and again. Each time I caught new details, the weariness in Dad's voice, the reference to what we decided 28 years ago. I'm 28. The way he said, "I know that makes me a terrible person," like he'd been carrying this weight for decades. What did they decide? Why would he wish I never happened? Was I not planned? Was I the result of something bad? My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was about something else entirely and I was just being paranoid. But no, he'd specifically said seeing me last weekend brought everything back. We'd had dinner at their place, just a normal Sunday family dinner. Mom had made pot roast. We'd watched football. Dad had seemed completely normal. I needed answers, but I couldn't exactly call my dad and say, "Hey, got your voice message where you said you wished I'd never been born. What's that about?" I needed to be smart about this. I needed information first. I called my girlfriend, Emma. We'd been dating for 3 years, lived together for 1, and she knew my family well. She was at work but answered on the second ring. "Hey babe, what's up?" "Em, I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound insane." I played her the message. There was a long silence on the other end. "Holy shit," she finally said. "Nolan, what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I can't stop thinking about what he said. 28 years ago. That's when I was born. What did they decide? What happened?" "Maybe you should just ask him directly. This could all be a misunderstanding. Or it could be exactly what it sounds like, and my entire life has been a lie." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Do you want me to come home? I can tell them it's an emergency." "No, I needed to tell someone. I'm going to do some digging, see what I can find out before I confront anyone." "Be careful, Nolan. Whatever this is, it's clearly something big. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Once you know, you can't unknow it." She was right, but I was already too far gone. I have to know. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about my next move. I'd always been close with my parents, especially my mom. I was their miracle baby, or so they'd always said. Mom had told me the story 100 times, how they'd tried for years to have a child, had almost given up hope, and then I came along, their miracle. But what if that was a lie? What if there was something darker underneath? I thought about Uncle Jim. He and Dad were close, almost inseparable growing up according to family lore. Jim had never married, never had kids, lived alone in the next town over. He was the cool uncle, always showing up with gifts, always available to help with whatever I needed. He'd helped me move into my first apartment, had co-signed my student loans when my parents couldn't. Now I wondered if there was a reason for his extra involvement in my life. I started with what I had access to: old family photos, documents, anything that might give me a clue. I went to my parents' house while they were at work. I still had a key from when I used to house sit for them. It felt wrong, sneaking around their house like a thief, but I needed answers. I started in Dad's office. He was meticulous about filing, everything organized and labeled. I went through his filing cabinet, looking for anything related to my birth. I found my birth certificate easily enough: Nolan James Fletcher, born September 15, 1995, to Richard Fletcher and Sarah Fletcher. Nothing seemed unusual about it. But then I found a locked box in the back of his bottom drawer. I'd never noticed it before. It was small, fireproof, the kind people keep important documents in. I tried a few combinations, birthdays, anniversaries, but nothing worked. I was about to give up when I remembered something. When I was 10, Dad had taught me about keeping passwords safe. He told me his trick was to use combinations that meant something personal but weren't obvious. I tried my birthday backwards, 1599, nothing. Then I tried his and Mom's wedding anniversary, 6121990, nothing. Then on a hunch, I tried Uncle Jim's birthday, 82468. The box clicked open. Inside were papers, old and yellowed, legal documents. My hands trembled as I pulled them out. The first document I saw made my blood run cold. It was an adoption agreement, dated September 20th, 1995, 5 days after my birthday. I was adopted. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I read through the document, my vision started to blur. The adoptive parents listed were Richard and Sarah Fletcher. That checked out. But the birth mother listed was anonymous, relinquished rights. And the birth father was listed as James Martin Fletcher. Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim was my biological father. I had to read it 3 times before it really sank in. My uncle was my father. My dad was actually, what, my adopted father, my uncle. This made no sense. Why would Uncle Jim give me to his brother? Who was my mother? Why had they all lied to me my entire life? I kept digging through the box. There were more documents, medical records from a hospital I didn't recognize in a town 2 hours away. And then I found a letter, handwritten, dated August 1995, a month before I was born. Richard, I don't know what else to do. Rebecca is dead and I can't raise this child alone. I'm not father material, you know that. You and Sarah have wanted a baby for so long, and this could be the answer for all of us. The baby deserves a stable home with 2 parents who can love him. I can't give him that. Please consider what we talked about. I know it's not conventional, but when has our family ever been conventional? Jim. Rebecca, my mother's name was Rebecca, and she was dead. I frantically searched through the rest of the papers. I found a death certificate. Rebecca Ann Morrison, died August 3, 1995. Cause of death, complications from a car accident. She'd been 7 months pregnant when she died. They'd performed an emergency C-section. I was born premature, kept in the NICU for 6 weeks before being released to Uncle Jim, technically, and then immediately adopted by Mom and Dad. My entire origin story was a lie. I wasn't a miracle baby. I was the orphan child of my uncle and some woman named Rebecca Morrison who died in a car accident. I was the inconvenient consequence of a tragedy that everyone decided to cover up with a more palatable story. I took pictures of everything with my phone, put the documents back exactly as I'd found them, and locked the box. I left the house in a daze, driving around aimlessly for hours, trying to process what I'd learned. By the time I got home, Emma was already there, pacing the living room. I've been calling you for 2 hours. What happened? Did you find anything? I told her everything. She listened in shocked silence, her hand over her mouth. Oh my God, Nolan, I don't even know what to say. I was adopted. My uncle is actually my father. My mother died and they all just erased the truth. They've been lying to me for 28 years. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I need to know more about Rebecca Morrison. I need to know who my mother was. Then I'm going to confront all of them. Over the next week, I became obsessed. I called in sick to work and spent every waking hour researching Rebecca Morrison. It wasn't easy. This was before social media was really big, and Rebecca had died in 1995. But I eventually found her obituary in the archives of a small-town newspaper. Rebecca Ann Morrison, 24, passed away unexpectedly on August 3, 1995, due to injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Rebecca was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend. She was a talented artist and had recently graduated from State University with a degree in fine arts. She is survived by her parents, Donald and Martha Morrison, her sister, Claire Morrison, and many loving friends. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the State University Art Scholarship Fund. She had been so young, only 24, younger than I was now, and she'd been an artist. I'd always loved drawing and painting, much to my dad's, Richard's, confusion. He and Sarah were both very left-brained, practical people. They'd supported my artistic interests but never really understood them. Now I knew where that came from. She had a sister, Claire Morrison. I searched for her online and found a Claire Morrison Chen living in Portland, Oregon. She was a photographer, had a website for her business. I stared at her photo on the website for a long time. She looked to be in her late 40s with dark hair and light eyes. I tried to see if I looked like her, if there was any family resemblance. I sent her a message through her website contact form. I kept it vague but intriguing. Dear Ms. Morrison-Chen, I believe I may be related to you through your sister, Rebecca Morrison. I would very much like to speak with you about her if you're willing. This is not a scam or a joke. I recently discovered some information about my birth that has led me to Rebecca, and I'm trying to understand my family history. If you're open to talking, please contact me. Nolan Fletcher. I didn't expect a quick response, but within 3 hours, my phone rang with an Oregon area code. Is this Nolan? A woman's voice, shaky and uncertain. Yes, is this Claire? You said your last name is Fletcher. Are you related to Jim Fletcher? He's my uncle, legally, but I recently discovered that he's actually my biological father. There was a long silence, then I heard her take a shuddering breath. Oh my God, you're Rebecca's baby, you're my nephew. I've been looking for you for 28 years. Those words hit me like a physical blow. You've been looking for me. After Rebecca died, after they took you from the hospital, Jim Fletcher disappeared. We tried to find him, tried to find you, but it was like you both vanished. My parents hired a private investigator, but Jim had covered his tracks well. We assumed. We didn't know what to assume. We feared the worst, and now here you are, all grown up. She was crying now. I can't believe it. Can we video chat? I need to see you. We switched to a video call, and when her face appeared on my screen, I gasped. She had the same eyes as me, the same exact shade of green-gray that I'd always thought was unique. Everyone in the Fletcher family had brown eyes. I'd always been told I got my eyes from some distant relative on Sarah's side. Another lie. Claire was staring at me too, tears streaming down her face. You look just like her. Oh my God, you have her eyes, her smile. This is incredible. We talked for 3 hours. She told me everything about Rebecca, how she'd been vibrant and creative and full of life, how she'd met Jim Fletcher at an art gallery where she'd been showing her work, how they'd fallen in love quickly, intensely, how she'd been so excited to be pregnant, had already started painting a mural for the nursery. Jim seemed great at first, Claire said, charming, attentive, but as the pregnancy progressed, he got distant. Rebecca told me he was scared about becoming a father, that he was pulling away. They'd had a big fight the day of the accident. She was driving to our parents' house, crying, upset. A drunk driver ran a red light. I'm so sorry, I managed to say. The hospital called Jim first since he was listed as her emergency contact. By the time we got there, you'd already been born via emergency C-section. You were so tiny, so fragile. They let us see you once in the NICU. Then Jim said he was taking responsibility for you, that it was what Rebecca would have wanted. We believed him. We were grieving, in shock. My parents weren't in a position to raise a baby. They were older, and my mom had health problems. We thought Jim would do right by you, that we'd be part of your life. But he disappeared. Yes, a few weeks after Rebecca's funeral, we went to the address he'd given us, and it was a fake. The phone number was disconnected. We tried to file for grandparents' rights, but without being able to locate Jim or you, there was nothing we could do. Eventually, we had to accept that you were gone. I told her everything I'd discovered. The adoption, the cover-up, the lie that had been my entire life. With each revelation, Claire's expression grew darker. They stole you, she said flatly. Jim stole you from your mother's family and gave you to his brother. They erased Rebecca completely. They denied you your heritage, your family. They denied my parents their only grandchild. My mother died 5 years ago, still grieving for both Rebecca and you. My father is in a nursing home now, but he's still sharp. This would mean everything to him. I haven't confronted them yet. I wanted to know the whole truth first. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but they don't get to keep lying to me. They don't get to just wish I never happened and pretend everything is fine. Claire and I made plans to meet in person. She wanted to fly out the following weekend. She also wanted to connect me with my grandfather, to tell him that I'd been found. I agreed, though the thought of meeting family members I never knew existed was overwhelming. After we hung up, I sat with Emma and told her everything. You have an entire other family that's been looking for you, she said, amazed. Nolan, this is huge. You have an aunt, a grandfather. Your mom was an artist. Don't you want to know them? Of course I do, but I also feel like my entire identity has been ripped away. Who am I? Nolan Fletcher, only child, miracle baby, or someone else entirely? And I'm so angry, Em. I'm so angry at all of them. Jim, Richard, Sarah, they all lied to me. Every single day of my life has been built on a lie. You have every right to be angry. The question is, what are you going to do with that anger? I spent the next few days planning. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to make them face what they'd done. I was going to make them accountable. First, I needed more information. I reached out to Claire again and asked if she had any photos of Rebecca, anything that could help me understand who she was. She sent me hundreds. Rebecca as a child, as a teenager, her art projects from college, photos of her pregnant and glowing. There was one photo that made me stop breathing. Rebecca and Jim together, his hand on her pregnant belly, both of them smiling. He'd loved her. At least at some point, he'd loved her. I also asked Claire for any documentation she had about trying to find me. She sent me emails from the private investigator they'd hired, letters they'd sent to addresses associated with Jim that had been returned, everything. It was all evidence of a family torn apart by lies. Then I did something that felt extreme but necessary. I ordered a DNA test. I wanted scientific proof of who I was. I used one of those ancestry services, but I also specifically had it tested against a sample I'd borrowed from Uncle Jim's house, a used coffee cup from his kitchen. I know, very CSI of me, to confirm paternity. While I waited for the results, I prepared for Claire's visit. I also started documenting everything. I wrote down every memory I had of my childhood, looking for cracks in the story I'd been told. And there were cracks now that I was looking. I remembered being 5 or 6 and asking Mom why I didn't look like her and Dad. She'd laughed it off, said I was a perfect mix of both of them and their ancestors. Lie. I remembered being 12 and having to do a family tree project for school. Uncle Jim had come over to help, and he and Dad had spent a long time in Dad's office, finding old family records. They'd probably been making sure their story was straight. Lie. I remembered being 16 and asking about why we didn't have extended family gatherings like my friends did. Sarah had said the Fletcher family was small, that most of Richard's and Jim's relatives had passed away or lived far away. I now knew that Rebecca's family had been cut out entirely. Lie upon lie upon lie. The DNA results came back in about a week. They confirmed what I already knew. Jim Fletcher was my biological father, but the ancestry results showed something else interesting. I had several DNA matches to people with the Morrison surname. I'd found biological cousins I never knew existed. The website showed I had a close match to someone named Donald Morrison Jr. I messaged Claire and asked who that was. She told me it was her brother, my uncle, Rebecca's younger brother, who I hadn't even known about. He'd apparently also been looking for me through DNA testing. Everything was lining up. I had proof, documentation, witnesses, family I'd been denied. Now it was time to act. Claire flew in that Friday. I picked her up from the airport, and when we saw each other in person for the first time, we both started crying. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "I can't believe you're real," she kept saying. "I can't believe I finally found you." We spent the afternoon together, Emma joining us. Claire had brought photo albums, some of Rebecca's artwork that had been saved, even some of her jewelry. She gave me a necklace that had been Rebecca's. "She was wearing this the day she died," Claire said softly. "The hospital gave it to us with her things. I've kept it all these years, hoping somehow I'd be able to give it to you." It was a simple silver chain with a small paintbrush charm. I put it on and haven't taken it off since. Claire also brought legal documents, the evidence of their search for me, Rebecca's will, which left everything to me, her child, with Claire as the trustee until I turned 18, death certificates, everything. We organized it all, preparing for what came next. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Claire asked. "Once you confront them, there's no going back." "I'm sure. They don't get to erase Rebecca. They don't get to pretend their lies were okay." We planned it for Sunday dinner. I told Sarah I wanted to have a family dinner, that I had some news to share. She was thrilled, thought maybe Emma and I were getting engaged. I let her think that. I invited Uncle Jim too, made it seem like a big celebration. Everyone agreed to come. Emma helped me prepare. We decided to do it at our apartment on my turf. I set up my laptop to record everything. I wanted documentation of their reactions, their confessions. Emma thought it was a bit much, but she understood why I needed it. Sunday came. I was a wreck all morning, anxiety and anger warring in my stomach. Claire came over early to help set up. We laid out all the documents on my desk in the office, ready to be revealed at the right moment. At 6 p.m., everyone arrived. Sarah brought her famous lasagna. Richard brought wine. Jim brought flowers for Emma, assuming we were announcing an engagement. They were all so happy, so oblivious. We made small talk over dinner. It was surreal, sitting there with these people who'd raised me, who I'd loved and trusted my entire life, knowing what I knew. I watched Jim laugh at something Sarah said, watched Richard refill everyone's wine glasses, and felt my anger building. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Sarah was getting antsy, excited for whatever news she thought I was going to share. "So," she said, smiling bright, "what's this big news? Don't keep us in suspense." I looked at Emma. She nodded, supportive. I took a deep breath. "Actually, I do have some news. I recently discovered something interesting about my family history." Oh, Richard's face was curious but not worried. "Not yet." "Yeah, see, I accidentally received a voice message that wasn't meant for me." I looked directly at Richard. "It was meant for Uncle Jim. Would you like to hear it?" Richard's face went pale. Jim sat up straighter. Sarah looked confused. I played the message. Richard's voice filled the room. "I wish Nolan never happened." Sarah gasped. "Richard, what on earth?" "Let me finish," I said, "because that message led me down a very interesting path. It made me wonder what you two decided 28 years ago. What happened 28 years ago that you've been hiding?" "Nolan," Jim started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not done. See, I did some digging. I went to Dad's office, Richard's office, and I found a locked box. And in that box, I found adoption papers. Imagine my surprise to discover that I was adopted. But that wasn't even the biggest shock. The biggest shock was finding out who my biological father is." I turned to Jim. "Want to tell everyone, Uncle Jim, or should I say Dad?" Sarah made a strangled sound. Jim's face was ashen. Richard just stared at the floor. "Nothing to say? Fine, I'll continue. I also found documents about a woman named Rebecca Morrison, my biological mother, who died in a car accident when she was 7 months pregnant with me, whose family tried desperately to find me after Jim here disappeared with me, whose family has been grieving for both her and me for 28 years. "Nolan, please," Richard tried to speak. "No," I was standing now, voice rising. "You don't get to talk yet. You've all been talking, been lying for my entire life. Now you're going to listen. You're going to sit there and listen to every single thing I've learned." I told them everything, every detail I'd uncovered. The fake address Jim had given Rebecca's family, the adoption that erased my true heritage, the elaborate story about being a miracle baby, the way they'd cut an entire family out of my life. Sarah was crying, but I couldn't tell if it was from guilt or shock. Richard still wouldn't look at me. Jim's head was in his hands. When I finished, there was a long, heavy silence. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice small. "We thought we were doing the right thing." "The right thing?" I laughed bitterly. "The right thing would have been telling me the truth. The right thing would have been letting Rebecca's family be part of my life. The right thing would have been not building my entire existence on a lie." "You don't understand," Jim said, looking up at me with red eyes. "Rebecca's death destroyed me. I couldn't look at you without seeing her, without remembering what I'd lost. I was a mess, Nolan. I was drinking. I couldn't hold down a job. I was in no state to raise a child. Richard and Sarah offered to take you, to give you the stable life I couldn't provide. It seemed like the best solution. So you erased Rebecca. You cut out her entire family. How was that the best solution?" "Her parents blamed me for the accident," Jim said. "They said if we hadn't fought that day, she wouldn't have been on the road. They were talking about suing for custody, about taking you away completely. We thought if I gave you to Richard and Sarah, if we made it seem like you were their biological child, you'd be safe. You'd be in the family, but protected from all the legal battles and the blame and the guilt." "That wasn't your choice to make," I was shouting now. "You don't get to decide that I didn't deserve to know my mother's family, that they didn't deserve to know me." Richard finally spoke. "We were trying to protect you, Nolan, from the pain, from the complicated truth. We wanted you to have a normal, happy childhood. Built on lies, every birthday, every holiday, every family moment was tainted by this lie. And now I find out through a voice message where you said you wished I never happened. Do you have any idea how that felt, to hear my own father say he wished I'd never been born?" "That's not what I meant," Richard said desperately. "I didn't mean I wished you were never born. I meant I wished the situation had never happened, that we'd made different choices. I love you, Nolan. You're my son." "Am I? Because according to the law, you adopted me under false pretenses. According to biology, Jim is my father. According to the truth that you all buried, I'm Rebecca Morrison's son, and I was stolen from her family. So who exactly am I, Richard?" No one had an answer for that. "There's something else you should all know," I said. "I found Rebecca's family. I've been in contact with her sister, Claire, and she's here. She's been here this whole time, listening to everything." I opened the office door, and Claire stepped out. The look on their faces was almost worth all the pain. "Hello, Jim," Claire said coldly. "It's been a long time." Jim stood up, looking like he might be sick. "Claire, You stole him, you stole my sister's baby, and you disappeared. Do you have any idea what you put my family through? My mother died still grieving for Nolan. My father is in a nursing home, and for years, one of his most heartbreaking moments of confusion is asking when Rebecca is bringing the baby to visit. You took everything from us. Sarah was openly sobbing now. We didn't know. Jim never told us that her family was looking. He said they didn't want anything to do with the baby. Another lie, I said. He's very good at those. Jim collapsed back onto the couch. I was scared. I was broken. I made bad choices. I've regretted it every day since. But not enough to tell the truth, Claire said. Not enough to let Nolan know where he came from. Not enough to give my parents the chance to know their grandson. What do you want? Richard asked quietly. Are you going to sue for custody? He's 28. It's a bit late for that. We don't want custody, Claire said. We want acknowledgement. We want Nolan to know his mother's family. We want the lies to stop. And I want more than that, I added. I want accountability. What you all did wasn't just morally wrong. It might have been legally wrong. Adoption fraud, falsifying records, cutting off a biological family's rights. I've spoken to a lawyer, and there could be consequences. That got their attention. Richard's lawyer brain kicked in. Nolan, please, we can work this out as a family. You don't need to involve lawyers. Why not? You involved lawyers 28 years ago when you were covering this all up. Why shouldn't I involve them now? Emma, who'd been quiet this whole time, stepped closer to me. Nolan, maybe we should all take a breath. This is a lot for everyone. She was right, but I wasn't ready to let up. I'd been living with this pain for weeks, while they'd been comfortable in their lives for nearly 3 decades. I want some things from you, I said. First, I want the full truth. Every detail of what happened, why it happened, all of it. No more lies, no more omissions. Second, I want public acknowledgement. I want our family and friends to know the truth about who I am and where I came from. Third, I want you to make this right with Rebecca's family. Claire deserves to know me, my grandfather deserves to meet me, and Rebecca's memory deserves to be honored, not erased. And if we don't agree, Jim asked. Then I go to the media. I go public with the whole story. The lawyer thinks we have a case for adoption fraud at minimum. I also have Rebecca's will, which left everything to me with Claire as trustee. You bypass that completely. There could be financial implications. And beyond all that, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of people you really are. It was a harsh ultimatum, but I was past the point of being gentle. Sarah looked at Richard, then at Jim. We'll do whatever you want, Nolan. Whatever it takes to make this right. I'm so sorry. I've loved you as my son since the moment I held you, and I never wanted to hurt you. We thought we were doing the right thing, but I see now how wrong we were. Please, give us a chance to fix this. Her tears seemed genuine, and part of me, the part that was still the little boy who'd loved his mom, wanted to comfort her. But I couldn't, not yet. I need time, I said. I need time to process all of this, to get to know Claire and my grandfather, to figure out who I am now that I know the truth. Emma and I are going to Portland next week to meet my grandfather. When I get back, we'll talk about what comes next. But until then, I need space from all of you. Richard nodded slowly. We understand. We'll give you whatever time you need. They gathered their things in silence. Sarah tried to hug me goodbye, but I stepped back. I couldn't handle physical contact with any of them right now. Jim paused at the door, looking like he wanted to say something, but eventually just left without a word. After they were gone, I collapsed on the couch. Emma sat next to me, and Claire sat on my other side. I was shaking, adrenaline leaving my system. You did good, Claire said softly. That took a lot of courage. I feel like I'm going to throw up, I admitted. That's normal, you just blew up your entire life. But Nolan, you did the right thing. The truth matters. Rebecca matters. Your real family matters. Over the next few days, I was a mess. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. Richard sent emails every day, long messages about how sorry he was, how much he loved me, trying to explain the choices they'd made. Sarah sent care packages with my favorite foods. Jim sent a short message saying simply, I'm sorry. I'll tell you anything you want to know about your mother. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't ready. Instead, I focused on learning about Rebecca. Claire had gone back to Portland, but we talked on video chat every day. She told me stories about their childhood, about Rebecca's dreams and fears and quirks. She showed me Rebecca's artwork, beautiful, vibrant paintings that took my breath away. I'd inherited more than just her eyes. Claire also connected me with my Uncle Don, Rebecca's younger brother. He was a software engineer in California, married with 2 kids, my cousins. I had cousins I'd never known about. Man, I can't believe you're real, Don said when we first video chatted. We've been looking for you through DNA databases for years. I tested my kids too, hoping they'd match with you somehow. And here you are, all grown up. His kids, Melissa and Jake, were teenagers. They were excited to meet their secret cousin. It was overwhelming, but also amazing. For the first time in my life, I looked at people who looked like me. Melissa had the same eye color. Jake had a similar nose. These were my people, my blood, in a way that the Fletchers never were. The trip to Portland was emotional. Claire picked Emma and me up from the airport, and we drove to the nursing home where my grandfather lived. "He has good days and bad days," Claire warned me. "Today is a good day. He knows you're coming. He's been talking about nothing else for a week." Donald Morrison SR was 86 years old, in a wheelchair, but sharp as a tack when we walked into his room. Claire had shown him pictures of me, so he knew who I was immediately. "Nolan," he said, and his voice cracked. "Oh my boy, look at you. You have Rebecca's eyes." I knelt down next to his wheelchair, and he reached out with shaking hands to touch my face. Then he started to cry, and so did I. This stranger, who was my grandfather, held my face and cried for his daughter, for the grandson he'd lost, for all the years that had been stolen from us. We spent hours together. He told me about Rebecca's childhood, about how she'd drawn on every surface she could find, how she'd turned their garage into an art studio as a teenager. He showed me photos from an album Claire had brought Rebecca as a baby, as a little girl covered in paint, as a young woman at her college graduation. "She would have been so proud of you," he said. "She wanted you so much. Even when Jim started pulling away, even when she was scared about doing it alone, she wanted you. She loved you before you were even born." That broke something in me. I'd spent weeks being angry, feeling unwanted because of Richard's voice message. But here was proof that my mother had wanted me desperately, that I wasn't a mistake or a burden or something to regret. I was loved. Before we left, my grandfather gave me something. "This was Rebecca's," he said, handing me a wooden box. "Her art supplies from college. We saved them, thinking maybe you'd want them someday. Claire said you liked to draw." Inside the box were paints, brushes, sketchbooks filled with Rebecca's drawings. I held them like they were precious artifacts, which I suppose they were. "Thank you," I managed to say. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," he said firmly. "Your family. You always were, even when we couldn't find you. And now that we have you back, we're not letting go." That trip changed something in me. I came back to my hometown feeling more grounded, more certain of who I was. I was Nolan, yes, but I was also Rebecca's son. I was part of the Morrison family. I had a heritage and a history that had been hidden from me but was mine to reclaim. When I got back, I finally agreed to meet with Richard, Sarah, and Jim. We met at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant. They all looked terrible, like they hadn't been sleeping. Good. We sat down and I pulled out a notebook. "I have questions, a lot of them, and you're going to answer all of them truthfully. If I catch you in a single lie, I'm walking out and you'll never hear from me again. Understood?" They all nodded. I started with Jim. "Tell me about Rebecca. How did you meet? What was your relationship like?" Jim took a breath. "I met her at an art gallery in 1994. She was showing her work and I was there with clients. She was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. We started dating and it was intense. She was creative and passionate and full of life. I fell hard for her." "Then why did you pull away when she got pregnant?" "I got scared. My job was unstable. I was drinking too much. I had commitment issues. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I started working more, staying out late, picking fights. I told myself I wasn't ready to be a father, that I needed time. I was an idiot." "You fought the day she died. What about?" Jim's face crumpled. "She wanted me to move in with her to prepare for the baby together. I said I wasn't ready. She accused me of not loving her, not wanting the baby. I said things I didn't mean, cruel things. She left crying and I let her go. If I had just gone after her, if I had stopped her from driving upset." "It wasn't your fault she got hit by a drunk driver," I said, surprising myself by defending him. "But what you did after was your fault. Why did you disappear?" "Her family blamed me. They were right to, but I couldn't handle it. I was drowning in guilt and grief. When Richard suggested adopting you, giving you a stable home, it seemed like the only good thing I could do. I convinced myself that you were better off without me, without the reminder of what happened to your mother. You could have let her family be involved. You could have told me the truth when I was old enough to understand. I know I was a coward. Every year that passed made it harder to tell the truth. The lie became set in stone, and I didn't know how to chip it away without destroying everything. I turned to Richard and Sarah. And you too, you actively participated in this. You raised me on lies. Why?" Sarah spoke first. "We'd been trying to have a baby for 8 years. Multiple rounds of IVF, miscarriages, nothing worked. We were devastated. When Jim came to us with you, this beautiful baby who needed a home, it felt like fate, like we were meant to be your parents. But you knew I had another family. Jim told us they didn't want you, that they blamed him and wanted nothing to do with the baby. We believed him because we wanted to. We wanted you so badly that we didn't ask enough questions. That's on us. And the fake story about me being your biological child. Richard answered this time. That was my idea. I thought it would be simpler, that it would protect you from questions and complications. We told people Sarah had been pregnant, that she kept it quiet after so many losses because she was superstitious. Everyone believed it, and the longer it went on, the more impossible it seemed to tell the truth. You falsified records. You committed fraud. Yes, Richard admitted. I'm not proud of it. I used my legal knowledge to make the adoption look like a private arrangement, to keep Rebecca's family from finding out. I thought I was protecting our family, but I was just compounding the lie. I asked them questions for 2 more hours. Every detail of the cover-up, every lie they'd told, every moment they could have told me the truth but didn't. They answered everything, and as far as I could tell, they were finally being honest. When I'd exhausted my questions, I sat back and looked at them. They looked broken, hopeful, terrified. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Right now, I'm still too angry, but I'm willing to try to work towards some kind of relationship on my terms. What are your terms? Richard asked. First, you acknowledge the truth publicly. You tell our family and friends what really happened. No more lies, no more cover-ups. Second, you embrace my relationship with the Morrisons. They're my family too, and I won't choose between you. Third, you all get therapy, individual and family. We're not going to heal from this without professional help. And fourth, you set up a memorial for Rebecca. A scholarship, a donation to an art program, something that honors her memory and acknowledges that she was my mother. We can do all of that, Sarah said quickly, whatever you need. And one more thing, I'm changing my name. That shocked them. What? Sarah whispered. Legally, I'm Nolan James Fletcher, but I want to add Morrison, Nolan James Fletcher Morrison. I want to honor both parts of my heritage, the family that raised me and the family I was kept from. I could see it hurt them, especially Sarah, but Richard nodded. That's fair, that's more than fair. Over the next few months, they followed through on everything. Richard and Sarah drafted a letter explaining the truth and sent it to all our extended family and close friends. The reactions were mixed. Some people were understanding, some were horrified by the deception. Richard's parents, my supposed grandparents, were devastated to learn I wasn't actually their biological grandchild, though they insisted they still loved me. Some friendships were damaged, maybe irreparably. They also set up the Rebecca Morrison Memorial Art Scholarship at State University, funding it with a substantial donation. Claire and my grandfather were involved in creating it, and we held a small ceremony to launch it. Richard, Sarah, and Jim attended and publicly acknowledged Rebecca's memory and their role in erasing her. It was awkward and painful, but necessary. The therapy was hard. In individual sessions, I worked through my anger, my identity crisis, my trust issues. In family sessions, we all confronted the dysfunction and lies that had defined our relationships. Jim, especially, had a lot to work through. His guilt over Rebecca's death had defined his entire life. Slowly, painfully, we started to build something new. It wasn't the same as before, it could never be the same, but it was more honest. I got to know my Morrison family. I spent Thanksgiving with them in Portland, meeting extended family, hearing stories about Rebecca, seeing myself reflected in their faces and mannerisms. My grandfather gave me one of Rebecca's paintings, a landscape she'd done in college. I hung it in my living room, a constant reminder of where I came from. I also started painting seriously for the first time in years. Using Rebecca's old supplies felt like connecting with her across time. I wasn't as talented as she'd been, but I was learning. Claire said I had her eye for color. My relationship with Richard and Sarah was the most complicated. I still loved them. They'd raised me, cared for me, been there for every milestone of my life. But I also couldn't forget that it was all built on a lie. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Sarah struggled the most with my relationship with the Morrisons. She saw them as a threat, worried that I'd choose them over her. It took a lot of therapy sessions for her to understand that love isn't a zero-sum game, that having a relationship with my biological family didn't negate what I had with her. Richard was more pragmatic about it, though I could see it hurt him too. He'd always thought of me as his son, his legacy. Learning to share that was difficult for him. Jim was the wild card. As I learned more about him and Rebecca, I saw him more clearly. He wasn't a villain, just a broken man who'd made terrible choices in the wake of tragedy. He'd never stopped loving Rebecca, never stopped feeling guilty about her death. In some ways, looking at me was his punishment, a constant reminder of what he'd lost and what he'd done wrong. We had a conversation, just the two of us, about 6 months after the confrontation. "I know I don't have the right to ask this," he said, "but do you think you could ever see me as your father? Not to replace Richard, but I am your dad biologically. I was there when you were born. I held you in the NICU. I gave you your name. Nolan was Rebecca's favorite name. James is my middle name. You were ours, even if only for a few weeks." I thought about it carefully. "I don't know. Right now you're Jim. You're my uncle who turned out to be my biological father. Maybe someday that will evolve into something else. But you have to understand, you gave up the right to be my dad when you gave me away and lied about it for 28 years. Richard earned the title of father by being there, even if the foundation was flawed. You can't just claim it back now." He nodded, looking sad but accepting. "That's fair. I just want you to know that I'm here. Whatever you need from me, whatever role you want me to play in your life, I'll do it. I owe you that much. I owe Rebecca that much." One of the most healing things I did was go through Rebecca's belongings that her family had saved. Claire had boxes of her things, journals, sketchbooks, letters. Reading her words, seeing her thoughts, I got to know my mother in a way I never thought possible. She kept a pregnancy journal. Reading it destroyed me and healed me at the same time. "I felt the baby kick today," one entry read. "It's the most amazing feeling in the world. I put Jim's hand on my belly, but he pulled away quickly, said he had to make a work call. I don't know what's happening to us. I thought he'd be excited, but he's slipping away from me. It scares me. But then the baby kicks again, and I remember that even if I have to do this alone, it will be worth it. This baby is already so loved." Another entry dated a week before her death. "I've decided to name him Nolan James if it's a boy. Nolan after my grandfather, James after Jim. Even though things are hard between us right now, I still love him. I still hope he'll come around. I want our son to have a piece of both of us." She'd named me, not Jim alone, but Rebecca. She'd chosen my name, had wanted me to carry pieces of both my parents. That knowledge was precious to me. I also found letters she'd written but never sent. Letters to her future child, to me. "Dear baby," one said, "I'm writing this at 2 a.m. because you're doing gymnastics in my belly and won't let me sleep. I don't mind though. I love knowing you're there, growing strong. I can't wait to meet you. I've painted a mural of the ocean in your nursery because I want you to grow up knowing how vast and beautiful the world is. I want you to be creative and curious and kind. I want you to know you're loved more than I can possibly express. Whatever happens, whatever life brings, you are wanted. You are my greatest adventure. Love, Mom." I cried reading that letter. I cried for the mother I never got to know, for the life we should have had together, for all the years that were stolen from us. But I also felt a deep sense of peace. I was wanted. I was loved. Not because of Richard and Sarah's desperation for a child, but because my mother had loved me from the very beginning. Emma was my rock through all of this. She held me when I cried, listened when I ranted, gave me space when I needed it. About 8 months after everything came out, I proposed to her for real. Not as a fake announcement for my lying family, but because I wanted to build a life with her, a life based on honesty and truth. She said yes, and we started planning a wedding. The question of who to invite was complicated. Both families, would that be too awkward? But Emma had a good point. This is our wedding, our celebration. We invite the people we love, period. They can all be adults for one day. So we invited everyone, the Fletchers and the Morrisons, my grandfather in his wheelchair, Claire and her husband, Uncle Don and his family, Richard, Sarah, and Jim. It was terrifying and wonderful. The wedding was beautiful. My grandfather cried through the whole ceremony. Claire gave a speech about how Rebecca would have been so proud of the man I'd become. Sarah also spoke, acknowledging both that she'd raised me and that she wasn't my only mother, that Rebecca would always be part of my story. The most surprising moment came when Jim approached me during the reception. "I have something for you," he said. "I should have given this to you years ago." He handed me a small box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant. It was Rebecca's. I was going to propose to her the week after she died. I'd finally pulled my head out of my ass and realized I was about to lose the best thing in my life. I bought the ring, planned this whole romantic gesture, but I waited too long. I was going to bring it to the hospital, to propose to her there and promise I'd be the father our child deserved, but she never woke up. He was crying now, years of guilt and grief pouring out. I kept it all these years as a reminder of my cowardice, but it's not mine to keep. It's part of your mother's story, and you should have it. Maybe you can give it to Emma someday, or save it for a daughter if you have one, but it should be in your family, where it belongs. I looked at the ring, imagining it on Rebecca's finger, imagining the life they could have had if things had been different. "Thank you," I said. "This means a lot." I'm sorry, Jim said. I know I've said it before, but I need to keep saying it. I'm sorry for all of it. For failing Rebecca, for failing you, for being too weak to do the right thing. I know you are, and I'm working on forgiveness. It's a process. He nodded and walked away, leaving me with the ring and a tangle of emotions. Life moved forward. Emma and I bought a house. I kept painting, getting better, even selling a few pieces. I made sure each one was signed, Nolan Fletcher Morrison, both parts of my identity acknowledged. My relationship with Richard and Sarah slowly improved. We'd never have the uncomplicated love we'd had before, but we built something new, something honest. Sarah learned to talk about Rebecca without feeling threatened. Richard worked on being honest about his feelings instead of hiding behind legal jargon and rationalizations. Jim and I developed a relationship that was uniquely ours. He wasn't my father in the traditional sense, but he was the person who could tell me about Rebecca in a way no one else could. He shared memories, stories, the intimate details of who she was. In those moments, I felt close to both of them. The Morrison family became a huge part of my life. I visited Portland regularly. My grandfather and I had a standing video chat every Sunday. When he died 2 years after we reunited, I was devastated, but I was also grateful we'd had that time together. In his will, he left me Rebecca's art studio equipment and a letter. Nolan, it read, I have loved you from the moment you were born, even in the years I couldn't find you. Getting to know you these past 2 years has been the greatest gift of my twilight years. You are so much like your mother, creative, passionate, thoughtful. She would be so proud. Live a good life, make art, love deeply. And remember that you come from love, no matter what lies tried to bury that truth. You were wanted, you were loved, and you always will be. Grandpa. I framed that letter and hung it next to Rebecca's painting. 3 years after the confrontation, Emma and I had a daughter. We named her Rebecca Claire Fletcher Morrison. When I held her for the first time, I thought about my mother holding me, loving me, fighting to bring me into the world even as she was dying. I thought about the chain of love and loss and lies that had led to this moment. I'm going to tell her the truth, I told Emma in the hospital. About all of it, age-appropriately, but the truth. She'll know where she comes from, all the complicated, messy, beautiful parts of it. I wouldn't expect anything else, Emma said, smiling. Richard and Sarah were there at the hospital, as were Jim, Claire, and Uncle Don. My daughter would know all her family, all her history. She'd grow up with honesty. When Sarah held baby Rebecca for the first time, she cried, She's beautiful, and thank you for the name, for honoring all the parts of your story. Rebecca Morrison deserves to be remembered, I said. She deserves to live on, not just in me, but in the next generation. Her story matters. Looking back on everything, from that voice message to now, it's been a journey I never expected to take. Learning the truth destroyed the foundation of my life, but it also gave me something real to build on. I lost the comfort of ignorance, but gained the strength of truth. Do I wish it had never happened? Do I wish I'd never heard that voice message, never discovered the lies? No, because living a lie, even a comfortable one, is not really living. The truth, no matter how painful, is what sets you free. My name is Nolan James Fletcher Morrison. I'm the son of Rebecca Morrison, who died too young but loved me fiercely. I'm the biological son of James Fletcher, a flawed man who made terrible choices but is trying to do better. I'm the adopted son of Richard and Sarah Fletcher, who raised me with love even if that love was tangled up with lies. I'm the nephew of Claire Morrison Chen, who never stopped looking for me. I'm the grandson of Donald Morrison SR, who got to know me before he died. I'm the husband of Emma and the father of Rebecca. I'm all of these things, all these identities woven together into something complicated and messy and real. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The voice message that started it all is still saved on my phone. Sometimes I listen to it just to remember where this journey began. I wish Nolan never happened. Those words hurt less now, because I know the full context. I know that Richard was overwhelmed by guilt about the lies, not regretful about my existence. I know that the situation was complicated, that everyone was doing what they thought was best even when they were wrong. But mostly those words hurt less because I know my mother's words too. You are wanted, you are loved, you are my greatest adventure. That's the truth I choose to carry with me, not the lies, not the betrayal, but the love that existed from the very beginning. Last month we had a family gathering, both families all together. We released biodegradable balloons in Rebecca's memory, each person sharing what they'd wished they could tell her. When it was my turn, I said, thank you for loving me, thank you for fighting to bring me into this world, thank you for the gifts you gave me, your eyes, your creativity, your passion. I'm going to make sure Rebecca, your namesake, knows all about her grandmother. Your story won't be erased ever again. As the balloons floated away, I felt Emma's hand in mine, held my daughter against my chest, and looked around at all the faces, flawed, complicated, but family nonetheless. The truth had broken everything, but from those broken pieces, we'd built something new, something honest, something real. And that was worth all the pain it took to get here.